As Julian said, I'm Katy. I teach over at Brighton Met and I teach over at Hastings College. Um, I do teach Blender, but I also teach like general game design. I teach a little bit of Unity, mainly the art, how to put assets into the game engine bit. I teach animation, sometimes audio, and other stuff, general things. But sort of my bread and butter is that I like making characters and storyboards and all that stuff. That was really kind of crap and vague, so if you have any specific questions, I can answer them. So today I did the bit about me already, so I'll skip over that part. I'll go through how I personally went about learning Blender. I'll talk a bit about why I learned Blender. I mean, it's about 2 sentences, but it's fine. I will point you in the direction of some people that I found super helpful for learning the bit of Blender that I wanted to use it for. Obviously, I can't promise that it's going to be relevant to everyone, because if you want to do Blender's like Photoshop, where you pick the thing that you want to use it for, and then that's probably about like 10% of the overall software. So it might be relevant, it might not be, but it's fine. And then use add-ons that I found useful. And then I'm gonna go through how I've been making this guy. He's unfinished, so apologies for any weirdness about it. Oh, also apologies in advance. You will see the base model. It will be a big, slightly unclosed red guy, so I apologize for that. There's nothing bad, it's just in case I click next and it's just everybody gets flashbanged. So first and foremost, I did also just kind of want to show off some of my 2D stuff as well. But when learning Blender for 3D modeling characters, I should say, this is specifically to do with that, or creating like 3D assets, really, it's important at the end of the day, or it helps to have a basic understanding of art fundamentals, whether that's life drawing, understanding like human or animal anatomy. Again, it depends what you want to do. Like if you want to be like a landscape artist or environment artist rather, understanding composition, lighting, perspective, that sort of thing. It all helps because you can essentially quickly sketch down your ideas before you even jump into Blender. So it just helps to plan it out first, and you should have some sort of art fundamentals as well. These are my early Blender projects. That frog is still terrifying. I think that was the first one I did. Blender, when I first opened it up, was really scary. It was like staring at the cockpit of like an aeroplane. I didn't know where I was, and I was afraid, and it was too overwhelming. So basically, I looked up a tutorial. They made like a cute little bunny rabbit thing. I made a frankly quite terrifying looking frog. And then I moved on to sort of trying to do like a low poly kind of asset thing. I then stopped for a while because I got overwhelmed by it again. And then I jumped right back in and tried to do something inspired by like whoever's played Fallout. You can collect like the little bobblehead things. I played most of New Vegas. But yeah, it's sort of inspired by those like bobblehead things. This is one of my old characters from ages ago that I've had for ages. I then, for some reason, got the itch to make like an Animal Crossing style version of me. I really like raccoons, they're cool. I realize I'm wearing these dungarees as I said that. But yeah, so that I made the turnaround for that one first, and then I had a crack at doing the modeling. And then that one over there is still a work in progress because I may have gotten a bit too ambitious too quick. But it's a vending machine inspired by Borderlands. I will finish it. Maybe one day. But yes. But the point is, like, each of these projects, I was trying to learn something new. So, like, these two was just generally going, what the hell is this software? How do I use it? This one was like, okay, I want to make, like, a clean model. I don't really want to focus too much on like texture painting. I just want to learn how to model. This one was, and then these two were combining the two, like learning how to texture paint and learning how to model. While I was doing all of this, these 4 Kenny Praise I found afterwards, but mainly this guy. This guy metaphorically held my hand through the whole thing. Me and Adam over there got very used to hearing his voice on the TV talking through how to make like axes and random stuff. But he's really, really good. Like if you want to jump into character modeling, asset modeling, making game engine ready assets in Blender, and it's all within Blender, he's like excellent. He does a bit of he just sort of does a bit of everything. Joey Carlino is really good, has some really, really good like beginner-friendly tutorials about animation and just generally in Blender. Doodly has some really cool videos about general, almost like 3D modeling and rigging and animation like theory. It's a bit more conceptual stuff. And Kenny Praise is a very talented sculptor. So if you want to get into character sculpting, he's got some really good tutorials. And they're like his entire workflow, and the videos are about 5 hours long, so they're not like easily digestible or anything, but you get to see his entire workflow. Yes, Blender is nothing if without add-ons, really. It's not nothing, but Blender basically does need a couple of add-ons to make life a bit easier. Otherwise, it is a little bit clunky still. So these 4 Blender add-ons are sort of my like staples. UCU Paint, if you want to do any sort of complex texture painting, is essential. Because by default, Blender will only allow you to texture paint on a single layer, which is very difficult. That fish thing up there, that texture painting was done all on one layer, and I kept having to like color pick and then carve into the shape and then color pick and carve into the shape. And it looks really cool, but it nearly made me go insane doing it. So then I found UCU Paint and put my head in my hands and went, why didn't I have that before? Like that. But essentially what UCU Paint does, it allows you to have layers in your texture painting, so it just makes life a hell of a lot easier. Loop Tools is really good for retopology, it's really good for modeling. It essentially allows you to select edges and you tell those edges to be a circle, a square, to, flatten, straighten, curve. So that's really helpful. Quad Remesher is made by the same person that does the remesher in ZBrush. So it essentially gives Blender ZBrush's remesher. Because Blender does have a remesher, but it turns everything really weird and it's really crispy. I don't know how else to describe it. If you've used it, you might know what I mean by crispy. Yeah. It works to an extent, but then you need like a bajillion polygons and verts to make anything look smooth. But Quad Remesher is really cool. Quad Remesher is not free, sadly. I think it's about 60 quid one-off purchase.
100.
Is it?
I think.
Oh.
I think.
Yeah.
It's all the only ones I've ever seen that's like that much money.
Yeah, I'm a chump.
Worth it though.
Yeah, I'm a chump that pays the 3 monthly rolling thing. And last but not least is Polyquilt, that essentially just makes retopology not as hellish in Blender. It allows you to almost like draw the mesh on top of the high poly mesh, and you don't have to sort of like manually stitch together all of the edges and vertices and stuff, because that just takes forever and makes me go insane, and it hurts my hand. It's a good way to avoid like RSI from retopology basically in Blender. So Polyquilt's cool. UC Paint, Loop Tools, and Polyquilt are free. Might want to double check about Polyquilt. Quad Remesher is not free, but is worth it in my opinion. This is the fun part. This is where you get to see how I made this guy. Like I say, he's still a work in progress. Because I'm never happy, I'm going to overhaul all of the texture painting. And I might make him do a T-pose instead of an A-pose, because I try to rig him and I try to put his arm above his head and his entire, like, pec came with it. Which wasn't ideal. So basically, he's not quite done, but there he is. But the first thing I did was I collected a lot of reference. This was all of the reference I could fit into this slide. This pure ref board is way bigger than this. If you don't know what this software is, it's Pure Ref. It's a really good software for just collecting references. Because basically if you copy and paste image and make it really, really small. I think it's like lossless, so you can zoom right in and have like the high res image, but it doesn't have to be really big on your screen, if that makes sense. PureRef's really good. It's free as well. You can add notes, bits and pieces like that. But basically, I spent probably a bit too long collecting references of Vanda from Arcane. This is Thor from Marvel Rivals, general references. I think that guy's from Borderlands, but it's mainly Vanda. And then sort of breaking down the general art direction I wanted to go for. I knew I wanted to take some inspiration from Borderlands, and I was playing around with the idea of having the sort of like very bold black lines, but I went off of it. I can't remember why. I think I just couldn't be bothered. But yeah, so taking inspiration more from Arcane and Rivals painting style, modeling style. Next came the block out, where he looks a bit like the Michelin Man, and he looks really weird. I took a lot of inspiration from George Zaki's process. I didn't do a great job because, again, I'm a little bit lazy and I get bored quite easily. So I didn't really refine like the muscle shapes maybe as much as he would in his projects. But I took the general practice of making separate objects of the main muscle groups. So all of these are separate like Blender objects, and then from there merging those together to bit by bit. So you can notice that the forearm and the upper arm and the hand are all separate objects still. So yeah, sort of merging things piece by piece, not all in one go, otherwise he just turns into an amorphous blob and then you have to resculpt everything in. So taking it step by step. Then comes retopology. We love retopology. The original goal for this model was to be rigged and animated. It still is. I will get around to it eventually. So I had to be really careful about where the loops were, how the retopology is. I've now been informed that although this retopology looks really fancy and cool, it's not that great, but it works. So after retopologizing him, these red line, not the pink ones, but the red lines here are where I've cut seams to UV unwrap the whole model into separate bits so I can texture paint it essentially. And then came texture painting. I'm really indecisive about how I want to paint this guy. I've gone through about 3 different iterations. Like I say, I want to go for that sort of like painterly, almost like Arcane inspired style, but without putting as much pressure on myself to make my stuff look like it came out of Fortiche, because that's a little bit asking too much from me. But yeah, like using UC paint just sort of block out the like highlights, and then using this the sculpt to then like figure out where I need to paint in the shadows. I did skip a step actually. After you do the retopology, you can, this is pretty standard 3D practice as far as I'm aware, but you can take your high poly sculpt, and obviously you can bake the normal map onto the retopology so he doesn't look so blobby essentially. So you can put the amount of detail you'd get on a very, very like silly like 2 million poly mesh onto a lower poly mesh without losing any detail. And that's and that's like pretty easy to do. You grab the normals, you set up the node, you plug the normals into a normal map into your BSDF texture material, and then you go, hey Blender, bake this into this please. And then suddenly it's like, wow, muscle definition's back. Yay, he doesn't look like the Michelin Man anymore. Love that. But yeah, there's plenty of tutorials online on how to bake normal maps in Blender. It is really super simple. But for this project, my next steps are to refine and finish the texture painting, brackets, overhaul it, rig, weight paint, and set up rig controls. That part might melt my brain a little bit, but I will do my best. I will do it. And then once I've got a rigged guy, then I will create a very short animation and render it and pray that my graphics card doesn't melt because they're super expensive these days. But it's fine. I'll just, yeah. Hopefully I won't melt my GPU by doing that. Yeah, thank you. That's it. That's my